Chapter 1: The First Day. The small town lay quiet beneath a soft morning mist, the kind that made the hills seem to stretch endlessly, gentle and slow. In the heart of the town, a little school stood, its windows reflecting the pale light of dawn. The air smelled faintly of old wood and books, comforting scents that made the building feel like a warm, secret world waiting to be discovered. Inside, the hallways were empty, the echo of footsteps soft against the polished floor. Children would soon arrive, filling the rooms with laughter and questions. But for now, the school breathed quietly, as if taking a deep, slow breath before the day began. Mr. Alaric, a teacher with hair touched by silver and eyes that held quiet warmth, walked down the hallway. His steps were unhurried, deliberate, as though he did not wish to disturb the calm that filled the air. There was something about him that made the world feel slower, safer. His students often said that just being in his presence was like listening to a soft stream flowing over steady and endlessly soothing. When the morning bell rang, a small boy appeared at the classroom door. Eli was new to the town and the school. His eyes were wide, filled with curiosity and a touch of nervousness. He clutched his satchel tightly, unsure of what to expect. "Good morning, Eli," said Mr. Alaric, his voice calm and measured, carrying a soft warmth that seemed to wrap around the boy like a blanket. "I hope your journey here was peaceful." Eli nodded shyly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, thank you." "Come in," Mr. Alaric said, stepping aside to let him pass. "Today is the first of many days, and every day will have its own quiet wonder. We will discover them together." The classroom was a gentle space. The walls were painted a soft cream, with shelves lined with books of all shapes and sizes. Sunlight filtered through the windows, spilling golden rectangles onto the wooden floor. Each desk was neatly arranged, the chairs inviting. There was no rush, no pressing urgency, just space for learning, observing, and growing. Eli took a seat near the window. He watched as other children arrived slowly, each one finding their place, each one bringing a small ripple of life into the quiet room. Mr. Alaric greeted them all with gentle nods and smiles, never raising his voice, yet his presence filled the space with calm authority. The day passed softly. Lessons were gentle, more like conversations than lectures. Mr. Alaric spoke of the world in small pieces, letting each thought settle before moving to the next. He told stories of distant lands and quiet forests, of rivers that wound slowly through hills, and birds that learned to fly by listening to the wind. Each story was like a soft lullaby for the mind, slow and deliberate, allowing children to imagine without rush or worry. During recess, Eli hesitated near the garden. It was a small space behind the school, filled with flowers and small shrubs, bees hovering lazily over blossoms. Mr. Alaric noticed him and approached, kneeling beside a bed of lavender. "Would you like to see something?" he asked softly. Eli nodded, stepping closer. Mr. Alaric's hands moved gently over the soil, brushing away dust and leaves. "The garden teaches patience," he said. "See these flowers? They grow slowly, in their own time. We cannot rush them. And so it is with learning, and with life itself." Eli watched the careful movements, the quiet care in every touch. He felt a warmth spreading inside, a sense that the world might not be so hurried or frightening after all. He sat beside Mr. Alaric, leaning back against the soft grass, and let the calm of the moment seep into him. When the final bell rang and children began to leave, Eli lingered. Mr. Alaric smiled. "Tomorrow, we will continue our quiet discoveries. For now, rest, and let the day settle in your mind like a gentle song." As Eli walked home through the misty streets, he thought about the classroom, the stories, the garden. For the first time in a long while, he felt at ease, as though the world had slowed down just enough for him to breathe and listen. And somewhere in the distance, the soft hills and quiet winds seemed to whisper that all would be well. That night, Eli lay in bed, eyes half closed, imagining the gentle classroom and the slow, careful movements of Mr. Alaric in the garden. The stories from the day floated through his mind, soft as feathers, and gradually sleep wrapped around him like a warm, quiet blanket. Chapter 2: A Whisper in the Garden. The next morning, the school awoke slowly. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows, painting soft golden patterns on the wooden floors. The air smelled faintly of damp earth and flowers, carried in from the little garden behind the school. It was a quiet morning, the kind that made everything feel like it existed in its own gentle rhythm. Eli arrived early, holding his satchel loosely, his mind still filled with thoughts of the previous day. The classroom was quiet, empty except for the soft echo of his footsteps. He wandered toward the window and saw Mr. Alaric kneeling among the lavender and tiny daisies, his hands brushing soil over the roots of young plants. The old teacher hummed a soft tune, almost as if the garden itself were listening. "Good morning, Eli," Mr. Alaric said, looking up with a warm smile. "Would you like to join me today?" Eli hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He stepped into the garden, feeling the coolness of the grass under his shoes. The flowers swayed gently in the morning breeze, their colors soft but vivid lavender, pale yellow, and soft pink. It felt like stepping into a world that moved slower, calmer, and quieter than the rest of life. "This garden," Mr. Alaric began, his voice soft, like a whisper carried by wind, "is not just for plants. It is for learning. Everything here has a story, if you pay attention. The flowers, the soil, the bees, they all teach patience and care." Eli knelt beside him, watching as Mr. Alaric gently pressed the soil around a tiny sprout. "But how do flowers teach patience?" he asked softly. "Patience," Mr. Alaric said, tilting his head toward the sun, "is learning to wait without worry. These flowers grow at their own pace. You cannot hurry them, no matter how much you want them to bloom. They remind us that some things like knowledge, like understanding, cannot be rushed. They arrive when the time is right." Eli thought about that, watching the delicate petals sway in the wind. He noticed a bee hover over a lavender blossom, pause, and then move on. It seemed to understand the rhythm of the garden better than he did. "Do you see the bee?" Mr. Alaric asked, following Eli's gaze. "It doesn't rush, yet it gathers what it needs. It moves with the quiet flow of life." They sat together for a while, hands brushing over soil, watching the subtle movements of the flowers and insects. There was no hurry, no noise, just the soft rustle of leaves and the occasional chirp of a bird. Eli felt a calmness spreading through him, as if the world had slowed to match the pace of the garden. After a while, Mr. Alaric leaned back on his heels and smiled at Eli. "The world outside this garden moves quickly," he said. "But here, we learn to listen to the slow things, the quiet things, the things that whisper." Eli nodded, understanding in a way that felt new. The garden seemed alive with small lessons, each one gentle but clear. The slow movement of the leaves, the soft hum of the bees, the way the sun touched each petal, everything carried a story, if only one had the patience to notice. "Tomorrow," Mr. Alaric said, "we will explore more. There are corners of this garden you have not yet seen, and each corner has its own gentle secrets." As the morning bell rang, the children began to arrive, filling the garden with soft footsteps. Eli stood slowly, brushing his hands on his trousers. He glanced back at the lavender, now sparkling with morning dew. The garden, and Mr. Alaric's quiet guidance, had left a warmth in his chest, a sense that life could move gently, and he could move with it. During the day, lessons continued with the same calm rhythm. Stories, soft and slow, filled the classroom, and Eli's mind carried the gentle lessons of the garden with him. He noticed details he had never seen before: the curve of a leaf, the way sunlight shimmered on the classroom floor, the soft weight of a book in his hands. By the time the sun began to sink behind the hills, Eli felt a quiet satisfaction. He had learned that patience was not about waiting idly, but about observing, feeling, and understanding. And in that understanding, there was a kind of peace, soft and slow, like the rhythm of a heart that knows it is safe. When he walked home that evening, the garden and Mr. Alaric's words followed him like a gentle song. He imagined the flowers swaying in the breeze, the bees moving carefully from bloom to bloom, and he felt a calmness settle over him. Tonight, he thought he would sleep deeply, carrying with him the whispers of a quiet, patient world. And as the stars began to twinkle softly above the hills, Eli drifted into dreams filled with gardens, gentle teachers, and the soft hum of a world that moved in perfect, quiet rhythm. Chapter 3: Stories of the Night. That evening, the classroom was quiet in a way that felt almost sacred. The sun had dipped behind the hills, leaving a soft twilight glow that slipped through the tall windows. Shadows stretched across the floor, gentle and slow, while the scent of old books and polished wood filled the air. Mr. Alaric moved among the desks, lighting small golden lamps. Their glow made the walls shimmer softly, turning the room into a gentle cocoon of warmth and quiet. The children now settled at their desks, watched with wide, eager eyes, their earlier energy softened by the slow rhythm of the evening. "Tonight," Mr. Alaric said, his voice low and smooth, "I will tell you a story that travels on the wings of the wind. It is a story not meant to excite, but to soothe. Listen with your hearts, not your hurry." Eli, sitting near the window, felt a calm wash over him. The classroom felt suspended in time, as if the world outside had paused to listen. Mr. Alaric began his tale slowly, carefully choosing each word. "Long ago," he said, "there was a young bird named Leora, who had never flown. Her wings were strong, yet she was afraid. She watched the hills stretching into the horizon, and the rivers curling softly through valleys. Each day she dreamed of flight, yet each night she huddled beneath the branches, listening to the whispers of the wind." The children leaned in, captivated by the gentle rhythm of the story. Eli felt his own breath slow, matching the slow cadence of Mr. Alaric's words. One morning the teacher continued. "The wind spoke to Leora. It said, 'Little one, the world waits for you, but only if you trust your wings and the quiet currents around you. Move slowly, observe the sky, and when you are ready, lift your heart and let the wind carry you.'" Eli imagined the little bird perched high on a tree, its feathers ruffled by the soft morning breeze. He could feel the hesitance, the small flutter of fear, and the gentle encouragement of the wind. "The first flight was not hurried," Mr. Alaric said, his voice softer now, like the low hum of a lullaby. "Leora stretched her wings slowly, lifted them carefully, and let herself drift. The wind cradled her, guiding her over green hills and sparkling rivers. She felt the rhythm of the world, the slow, patient heartbeat that had always been there, waiting for her to notice." As the story unfolded, Eli felt his eyelids grow heavy. The classroom, the warm lamps, and the soft words wrapped around him like a thick, comforting blanket. He could hear the whispers of the wind in his mind, carrying Leora over hills and valleys, teaching him that fear could be softened by patience. "The bird learned," Mr. Alaric said, his voice dipping even lower, "that the world was not something to rush through. It was something to feel, to observe, to become part of. And as she flew, every moment was a lesson in trust, in quiet, and in the gentle unfolding of life itself." The children's breathing had slowed. Some, like Eli, were almost asleep, eyes fluttering closed as the soft cadence of the story carried them into their imaginations. "When night falls," Mr. Alaric whispered, "the world is not silent. It sings softly to those who listen. The wind, the trees, the quiet of the hills, they all have stories to tell. You need only close your eyes and hear them." Eli's thoughts drifted, imagining the hills, the gentle rivers, the small bird flying under the watchful care of the wind. His heart felt light, unhurried, as though the story itself had slowed his mind and settled it into a rhythm of calm. By the time Mr. Alaric's tale came to its soft conclusion, the classroom was nearly silent. The golden lamps flickered in the dim room, casting gentle shadows that swayed like slow dancers. "Rest now," Mr. Alaric said quietly, "and let the stories of today settle in your minds. Tomorrow, we will find more whispers to listen to, more lessons hidden in quiet corners. Sleep gently, little ones." Eli, barely conscious of moving, rose from his desk and left the room with the other children, carrying with him the warmth of the story. Outside, the twilight had deepened into night. The first stars twinkled softly above the hills, like tiny lanterns guiding him home. That night, Eli lay in his bed, the images of Leora the bird and the slow, cradling wind drifting through his dreams. He could feel the gentle rhythm of the world, slow and soothing, wrapping around him like a soft blanket. His mind, once restless, had settled into the calm pattern of listening, waiting, and trusting the quiet world to carry him safely through the night. And as sleep came quietly, like a soft breeze through the trees, Eli dreamed of flying over hills, guided by whispers, in a world that had learned to move slowly, gently, and with endless care. Chapter 4: The Secret Library. The following week, the air in the school grew cooler. Morning mist lingered longer over the hills, and the smell of damp leaves drifted in through open windows. Eli had grown more comfortable in the classroom now. He no longer clutched his satchel quite so tightly, and his footsteps echoed with a little less hesitation. One afternoon, after lessons had ended and the other children had gone home, Eli lingered. The golden light of the late sun streamed through the tall windows, making the dust in the air look like tiny stars. Mr. Alaric was tidying books on the shelves, his movements calm and unhurried. "Sir," Eli asked softly, "are there more books in the school?" Mr. Alaric turned slowly, a knowing smile spreading across his face. "Ah, you have begun to hear the whisper of curiosity. That is a good sound, Eli. Yes, there are more books, though they do not sit in plain sight." Eli tilted his head, intrigued. "Where are they?" "Follow me," Mr. Alaric said gently, walking toward the back of the room. He pushed aside a tall shelf, revealing a narrow door almost hidden in the corner. The wood was old, the handle smooth with age, as though many hands had turned it long ago. With a soft creak, the door opened, and Eli stepped inside. His breath caught. The room was small, dimly lit by a single window high in the wall. Shelves lined every side, reaching almost to the ceiling, filled with books whose spines were faded, worn, and soft with age. The air smelled of paper and ink, of stories long told and waiting to be told again. "This," Mr. Alaric said quietly, his voice almost reverent, "is our secret library. It is not on any map, not written in any record. It is a place for quiet discovery, for those who are ready to listen." Eli's eyes grew wide. He ran his hand along the spines of the books, feeling the different texture: smooth leather, rough cloth, delicate paper. Each one seemed to hum with a story waiting to be released. "Choose one," Mr. Alaric whispered. "Do not rush. Let the book find you." Eli closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the silence of the room. He reached out slowly, his fingers brushing along the shelf until they stopped at a thin pale blue volume. He pulled it free and looked at the cover. The title, written in faded gold letters, read, "The River's Journey." "Ah," Mr. Alaric said softly, "a gentle choice. That story flows like water, it will not rush you." Eli opened the book and began to read. The words moved like a slow stream, telling the tale of a river born from a small spring in the mountains. It traveled through valleys and forests, winding past villages, carrying stories with it wherever it went. The river did not hurry to meet the sea. It flowed steadily, patiently, touching every life in its path. As Eli read, the quiet of the room deepened. He felt as though he were moving with the river itself, drifting gently through landscapes he had never seen, yet somehow new in his heart. Mr. Alaric sat nearby, his eyes half closed, as though he too were carried by the quiet current of the story. "Books," he murmured after a while, "are like rivers. They carry us from one place to another, slowly, letting us notice the small things along the way. And when we arrive at the end, we find we are not the same as when we began." Eli closed the book gently, his mind still drifting in the flow of the river. He felt calm, as though he had traveled far without leaving the quiet room. "Can I come here again?" Eli asked, his voice hushed. "Of course," Mr. Alaric replied. "But remember, this library is not for hurried minds. It is for those who wish to walk slowly through words, to let stories settle like soft rain." Eli nodded, feeling as though he had been entrusted with a precious secret. When he finally left the hidden room, the sky outside was painted in soft shades of purple and gold. The first stars had begun to appear, twinkling faintly in the distance. As he walked home, Eli thought about the secret library and the river in the story. He felt as though the world around him was flowing too, carrying him gently forward. That night, as he lay in bed, he imagined the shelves filled with books, each one a quiet river waiting for him to step into its current. His eyes grew heavy, his breath slowed, and soon he was dreaming of drifting waters, soft hills, and the whisper of turning pages that sounded like the hush of the sea. Chapter 5: Lessons in Patience. The days at the little school began to fall into a calm rhythm. Morning light would slip through the windows, painting soft shapes across the floor. The children would arrive with footsteps that echoed lightly down the halls, and Mr. Alaric would greet them with a nod, a smile, and words spoken slowly, as if each syllable had been chosen with care. Eli found himself growing more comfortable, no longer shy when he entered the classroom. He had discovered the garden and the secret library, both places where time seemed to move differently, slower, softer, as though the world had learned to breathe at a gentler pace. One morning as the class gathered, Mr. Alaric carried a small pot to the front of the room. Inside it was a single seedling, fragile and green, no taller than his thumb. The children leaned forward curiously, their eyes wide with wonder. "Today," Mr. Alaric said, placing the pot on the desk, "we will learn a lesson from this little plant. It is a lesson in patience." The children exchanged puzzled glances. "But it's just a sprout," one of them said. "Exactly," Mr. Alaric replied, his eyes shining gently. "It has not yet grown tall, it has not yet bloomed. But still, it is alive, reaching slowly toward the sun. Its journey cannot be hurried." He handed each child a small pot, some soil, and a single seed. "You will each plant your own," he explained. "Every day you will water it gently, every day you will wait, and in time, if you are patient, you will see it grow." The classroom filled with the quiet sound of soil being poured, fingers pressing seeds into the earth, and small whispers of excitement. Eli held his pot carefully, lowering the seed into the soil as though it were the most delicate treasure. He covered it gently, then looked up at Mr. Alaric. "But what if nothing happens?" he asked softly. "Ah," Mr. Alaric said with a smile. "That is the very heart of patience. You may not see changes right away. Some days will feel still, and you may wonder if anything is happening at all. But growth is quiet, Eli. It happens slowly, beneath the surface, where our eyes cannot see. We must trust the silence." The children placed their pots on the windowsill, where sunlight streamed through. For the rest of the lesson, they spoke softly about the waiting, about how it felt to care for something unseen. As days turned into weeks, Eli checked his pot faithfully each morning. At first it seemed unchanged, only soil and the faint scent of earth. Yet Mr. Alaric reminded him, "The seed is working, even when you cannot see it. Trust the hidden work of time." Then, one morning, Eli gasped. A tiny green shoot had broken through the soil. It was small, almost fragile, but it was alive. His heart filled with quiet joy, not the loud cheer of sudden surprise, but the soft glow of knowing that waiting had been worth it. He ran to show Mr. Alaric, who nodded slowly, his eyes kind. "Do you see? Patience rewards those who wait gently. The world does not bloom on demand, but in its own time, and when it does, it feels all the more precious." The other children soon discovered sprouts in their pots too. Each one celebrated quietly, leaning close to the windowsill as if listening for the soft voice of the plants. The classroom began to feel alive in a new way, filled with the hush of growth and the gentle wonder of patience. One afternoon, when the children had gone, Eli lingered. He touched the leaves of his sprout carefully, afraid of harming it. "Why does patience feel so difficult sometimes?" he asked Mr. Alaric. The old teacher smiled. "Because we live in a world that moves quickly, Eli. People hurry, rushing from one moment to the next, as though the present were not enough. But here, in this classroom, and in this garden, and in your little pot, we learn a different truth, that waiting is not empty, it's full. Full of quiet work, invisible effort, and gentle unfolding." Eli nodded slowly, letting the words settle in his heart. He thought of the river from the secret library, the bird from the evening story, the flowers in the garden. They all moved in their own time, and none of them hurried. That evening, as Eli walked home under the fading glow of the sunset, he carried the lesson with him. The streets seemed slower, the breeze softer, the hills gentler. He realized that patience was not about waiting for something to happen, it was about trusting that life was already happening, quietly, all around him. That night he drifted to sleep with the image of the little sprout glowing in his mind. He dreamed of green leaves stretching toward the sun, of rivers flowing without hurry, of whispers in the wind reminding him that all things would bloom when they were ready. Chapter 6. The Rainy Day. The morning began with the soft sound of rain tapping against the windows. When Eli woke, the world outside seemed wrapped in silver mist, and the rooftops shimmered beneath the steady fall of water. The usual sunlight was hidden, but the air felt fresh and cool, carrying the scent of wet earth and quiet stillness. When Eli arrived at the little school, droplets clung to his hair and shoulders. The other children came in with umbrellas dripping, boots splashing lightly on the floor. The classroom felt warmer than usual, its lamps glowing softly, casting golden light against the gray outside. Mr. Alaric greeted them with his usual calm smile. "Today," he said, his voice low and steady, "the rain has written its own lesson for us." The children tilted their heads curiously. The teacher led them to the windows, where streams of raindrops traced wandering paths down the glass. "Listen," he whispered. The room grew still. Outside, the rain pattered against the roof and leaves, sometimes quick, sometimes slow. It was not loud, but it was constant like a heartbeat, steady and patient. "Rain teaches us rhythm," Mr. Alaric continued. "It reminds us that even the sky has its own music. Some days are filled with bright sunlight, and some are filled with quiet showers. Both are needed. Both carry lessons." The children stood silently, watching the rain. Eli pressed his hand gently to the window, feeling the faint chill through the glass. He thought the rain looked like tiny silver threads stitching the sky to the earth. When they returned to their desks, Mr. Alaric brought out a box of candles. One by one, he lit them, until the classroom flickered with soft lights. The flames wavered but did not fall, glowing gently against the dim day. "We will let the rain be our companion," he said. "We will read, we will write, and we will dream, while the clouds above water the world below." The children opened their books, their pens moving slowly across paper. Eli found his mind drifting, not away from his work, but into a space where words felt softer, calmer. The steady tap of rain became like a lullaby in the background, steady and endless. After a while, Mr. Alaric closed his own book and spoke. "Does anyone know why the rain is important?" A small hand rose. "It helps plants grow," a child answered. "Yes." The teacher nodded. "It feeds the soil, fills the rivers, and quenches the thirst of the trees. Without it, the world would wither." Another voice added, "It cleans the air." Indeed, Mr. Alaric smiled. Rain is both gentle and strong. It can nourish quietly, or it can carve valleys and change the shape of mountains. But even in its gentlest form, as it is today, it is always at work. The children seemed to listen more closely to the sound outside after that, realizing the rain was not just noise, but a gift. Later, when lessons paused, Mr. Alaric brought out a basket of paper and paints. "Since we cannot go to the garden today," he said, "let us create one here." The children painted flowers and trees, rivers and skies, filling their pages with colors that seemed brighter against the gray rain outside. Eli painted his little sprout from the windowsill, imagining how it would grow taller with every drop of water. He added the rain itself, painting thin blue lines that touched the leaves gently, like a mother's hand. When everyone had finished, they placed their paintings around the room. The walls bloomed with colors, turning the dim classroom into a meadow of imagination. As the candles flickered and the rain tapped steadily, the room felt like a cocoon, a shelter, not only from the weather, but from hurry, from noise, from the restless pace of the world beyond. Mr. Alaric spoke softly, almost as if he were speaking only to the air itself. "There are days when the world feels slow, when the sky is heavy, and the sun is hidden. But these are not lost days. They are days of rest, days when the earth drinks deeply, and when we, too, may grow quietly within." Eli felt warmth spread in his chest as he listened. He realized that not every day needed brightness. Some days were meant to be gentle, hushed, wrapped in the sound of falling rain. When the school day ended, the rain had softened to a light drizzle. The clouds were breaking, showing faint hints of pale blue sky. The children gathered their belongings, carrying with them their paintings, their books, and the quiet peace of the day. Eli lingered by the window a moment longer, watching a single raindrop slide slowly down the glass until it disappeared. He thought of patience again, of trust, of the way even the sky seemed to rest. "Thank you, rain," he whispered softly, almost to himself, and then he stepped outside. The air smelled fresh, like new beginnings. The puddles reflected pieces of the sky, and Eli walked carefully, not to disturb them too quickly. That night, when he lay in bed, he listened once more. Beyond his window, the last drops of rain still fell. He closed his eyes, imagining the sound was the world itself breathing, slow and steady, teaching him to breathe the same way. And in that rhythm, Eli drifted gently into sleep. Chapter 7. The Journey to the Hilltop. The morning after the rain, the world seemed freshly washed. The air carried the scent of wet grass and blooming earth, and the sky, still pale with lingering clouds, looked softer than usual. Drops of water clung to leaves and glistened like tiny gems whenever the sunlight touched them. When the children arrived at the little school, Mr. Alaric stood at the doorway with a walking stick in his hand. His cloak rested lightly on his shoulders, and his eyes seemed brighter than usual. "Today," he said gently, "we will not stay within these walls. The rain has prepared the earth for us, and the sky has given us clear air to breathe. We will climb the hilltop together." The children murmured with excitement. Some had never gone beyond the garden with their teacher, and the thought of walking out into the open world filled them with wonder. Each child carried a small satchel with bread, fruit, and a flask of water. Mr. Alaric carried nothing but his walking stick, though Eli thought it looked less like something he needed and more like something that belonged to him, as though the stick had traveled many paths by his side. They set out in a quiet line, the children's footsteps splashing softly through the damp earth. Birds called gently from the trees, their voices clearer after the storm. The river they passed flowed fuller, its waters gleaming beneath the early light. As they walked, Mr. Alaric did not hurry them. "The hilltop," he explained, "is not only a place to reach but also a path to walk. We will go slowly. Every step is part of the lesson." The children looked around, noticing how the rain had changed the world. Moss on stones glowed greener. Small streams trickled where none had been before, weaving silver lines through the grass. Eli stopped once to watch a snail move carefully along a leaf, its shell shining like polished amber. Mr. Alaric paused beside him, following his gaze. "Even the snail climbs its hill," he said softly. "It carries its home with it, steady and patient, a reminder that speed is not the measure of progress." They continued upward. The path grew steeper, but the ground was soft, not harsh. The children's laughter rose and fell like the wind, carried gently between the trees. Some spoke quietly, pointing out wildflowers that had opened after the rain, or clouds drifting slowly across the sky. Halfway up, they rested beneath an old oak tree. Mr. Alaric invited them to sit in a circle, sharing the bread and fruit they had brought. "Every journey has moments of pause," he said as they ate. "We do not climb to exhaust ourselves, but to see more clearly. Sometimes it is the resting, not the walking, that teaches us what we came to learn." Eli chewed his bread thoughtfully, gazing upward. Through the branches, he could see the hilltop rising above them, its grass glowing faintly golden in the sunlight. It felt close, yet far, like a promise waiting to be reached. When they resumed their climb, the path grew narrower. The trees thinned, and the air felt cooler as the breeze swept across the slope. The children's steps slowed, but no one complained. Mr. Alaric's voice, steady and quiet, guided them. "Notice how your breath changes," he said. "Notice how your body asks for patience, for steady rhythm. The hill does not demand haste, asks only for presence. Step by step, and the top will greet you." At last, after what felt both long and short, the hilltop opened before them. The children stepped onto the wide, grassy crest, and their eyes widened. Below stretched the valley, washed clean by rain, its fields shining like a patchwork of greens and golds. The river wound like a silver ribbon through the land. Beyond it, the distant mountains rose softly, their peaks touched by drifting clouds. The children grew quiet, their voices hushed by the vastness of the view. Eli felt as though the world itself had leaned closer to whisper its secrets. Mr. Alaric stood at the center, his cloak stirred gently by the wind. "This," he said, "is why we climb. Not for the top alone, but for the sight it offers. The reminder of how wide and beautiful the world is, even when we forget to look." The children sat together in the grass. Some leaned back, staring at the sky. Others pointed softly at birds circling above. Eli sat close to Mr. Alaric, feeling both small and wide, as if the hilltop had stretched something inside his heart. After a long silence, Eli asked, "Why does it feel different up here?" Mr. Alaric rested his hand on the boy's shoulder. "Because the hill has asked for your effort, and now it rewards you with perspective. You see the same world you walked through, but from above, it feels new. It is the same with many things in life. We must climb to understand what was already there." The wind carried the faint sound of bells from the village below, blending with the rustle of the grass. The children lingered in the hush, breathing in the wide sky, feeling as though time itself had slowed to rest beside them. When it was time to descend, they did so quietly. Their steps felt lighter, though the path was the same. The hill had not changed, but something within them had. Back at the school, as the day ended, Eli glanced at the little sprout on the windowsill. Somehow, it looked taller than before, though perhaps it was only his heart that had grown. That night, as he lay in bed, Eli dreamed of walking up hills that touched the clouds, each one offering a new view, each one teaching him to see the world with gentler eyes. And in those dreams, Mr. Alaric's voice lingered, calm and steady. "Step by step, Eli. Every hilltop waits for you, in its time." Chapter 8: The Quiet Festival. The village had a tradition that came once each year, when the days began to shorten and the evenings grew cool. It was called the Lantern Festival, though it was not loud or hurried like many celebrations. Instead, it was a night of gentle light, soft music, and quiet joy that filled the streets like a warm breeze. For Eli, it was his first time attending. As the day of the festival arrived, he felt both curious and excited. At the little school, Mr. Alaric spoke to the children about what they would see. "Tonight," the teacher said, his voice steady and kind, "the village will not shine with noise, but with peace. Every lantern is a reminder of the light we carry within us. We will walk together slowly, and let the evening teach us." When the sun dipped below the hills, the village stirred with a soft glow. Lanterns of all shapes and colors hung from doorways and trees. Some were painted with flowers, others with birds, stars, or gentle rivers. Their light was golden, swaying slightly in the cool evening breeze. Eli walked beside his classmates, his eyes wide. The cobblestone streets, usually quiet and plain, seemed transformed into a pathway of stars. The people of the village moved slowly, carrying their own lanterns, greeting one another with smiles instead of shouts. Even laughter sounded softer, as though it were wrapped in silk. Mr. Alaric carried a lantern too, simple in design white paper with a single painted circle of blue. When Eli asked what it meant, the teacher replied, "It is the sky. Wide, patient, endless. A reminder that light does not need to be many colors to be full." The children were given their own lanterns to carry. Eli's was painted with a sprouting plant, its leaves reaching upward. He held it carefully, watching the flame inside flicker with each step he took. Music drifted through the air, gentle flutes, the soft hum of strings, and the quiet beat of small drums. It was not a performance, but more like a conversation between the instruments, weaving a sound that seemed to match the rhythm of footsteps and glowing light. The procession of lanterns moved toward the village square. There, a fountain reflected the golden glow, and the air was filled with the scent of bread, honey, and spiced tea. Families gathered, children ran slowly with their lanterns, and elders sat watching with peaceful smiles. Mr. Alaric guided the children to sit near the fountain. The water shimmered, carrying the reflection of 100 small flames. "Do you see?" he asked softly. "Each lantern alone is gentle. Together they are a river of light, just as each of you alone are bright in your own way. But together you shine more fully." The children nodded, their faces lit by the glow. Eli felt warmth in his chest, as though his lantern were not only in his hands, but inside him as well. Later, as the night deepened, a hush fell over the square. The music slowed until it was little more than a whisper. Then, one by one, the people placed their lanterns on the water. Eli watched, breath held, as the first lantern floated away, its light drifting gently across the fountain's surface. Soon dozens followed, golden circles gliding slowly like stars across a dark sky. When it was his turn, Eli lowered his lantern carefully into the water. For a moment, it wavered, as if deciding whether it could float. Then, steadied by the current, it drifted forward, joining the others. He felt a quiet thrill in his heart, not loud like excitement, but soft like belonging. His little lantern, painted with a sprout, was no longer alone. It was part of something larger, gentle constellation moving together. Mr. Alaric placed his own lantern last. The simple white glow with its single blue circle joined the others, reflecting the endless sky above. As the lanterns drifted, the teacher spoke softly to the children. The festival reminds us that we are all lights. Some days our flame feels strong, and some days it feels small, but always, it matters. Always it belongs to something greater. The children sat quietly, listening to both his words and the soft lap of water against stone. Eli leaned against the fountain's edge, his eyes following his lantern until it disappeared into the cluster of lights. For the first time, he understood something he had not been able to put into words, that he was both himself and part of the world. And both truths were beautiful. The night continued with soft laughter, shared food and music that rose gently like a lullaby. The children grew drowsy, leaning on one another, their lantern-lit faces glowing with quiet joy. When it was time to return, the streets were darker, for most of the lanterns had floated away, yet the children did not mind. They carried the glow inside them now, as though the light had settled into their hearts. Eli walked close to Mr. Alaric, feeling safe in the hush of the night. He thought of the sprout in his windowsill, the hilltop view, and the sound of rain. All of it seemed connected now, like lanterns drifting together in the same stream. That night, when he lay in bed, he dreamed of countless lanterns floating across a dark sky, rising higher and higher until they became stars. And among them, his little sprout lantern glowed steadily. Not the brightest, not the largest, but full of its own quiet light. Chapter 9: The Gift of Silence. The days after the festival carried a lingering glow. Though the lanterns had floated away and the music had faded, the children still spoke of the night in soft voices, as if the memory itself was fragile and should not be disturbed. Eli, especially, carried the feeling with him. At times he would close his eyes and see again the little sprout painted on his lantern, drifting across the water until it joined the others. He felt lighter, as though some hidden part of him had begun to grow quietly, like his plant on the windowsill. One morning, as the class settled into their desks, Mr. Alaric stood at the front of the room. His hands were folded over his walking stick, and his gaze was steady, almost deeper than usual. "Today," he said, "we will not read, we will not write, we will not paint. Today our lesson is silence." The children looked at one another, puzzled. A lesson with no words, no movement. Mr. Alaric smiled gently. "Silence is not emptiness," he explained. "It is a gift, waiting to be opened. In silence, we hear things we do not hear otherwise, the beating of our own hearts, the whisper of the wind, even the thoughts we carry inside. Come, we will walk." He led them from the classroom, through the garden, and down a narrow path that wound between tall grasses. The morning sun touched the land softly, and a faint breeze carried the scent of wildflowers. "From here," Mr. Alaric said quietly, "we will speak no words until we return. Let the world speak instead." The children nodded, and then the hush began. At first, Eli felt awkward. His mouth wanted to form questions. His feet wanted to run. But as the silence stretched, he began to notice things he had never truly noticed before. The crunch of gravel beneath their shoes, the flutter of wings as a sparrow darted from one bush to another, the rustle of grass as the breeze bent it gently, even the sound of his own breaths, steady, alive. They walked slowly, following the curve of the path. The world seemed to grow larger with each step, as though sound itself had opened a hidden door. Eli saw dew still clinging to the tips of leaves, sparkling like silver threads. He noticed the way light flickered between branches, making patterns on the ground. He even saw an ant carrying a crumb twice its size, moving with a determination that seemed almost heroic. Without words, the children pointed things out to one another. A butterfly resting with wings closed, a cloud shaped like a ship, a cluster of mushrooms hidden in the shade. They smiled, sharing discoveries without breaking the silence. When they reached a small clearing, Mr. Alaric motioned for them to sit. The grass was soft, the earth still damp from the rain a few days before. The children formed a quiet circle, their eyes lifting toward the sky above. The silence deepened. At first it was filled with sounds of nature, the chirp of birds, the sigh of the wind. But slowly, even those sounds seemed to soften, until what remained was something deeper. A stillness that seemed to rest beneath everything, like the ground beneath their feet. When at last Mr. Alaric spoke, his voice was low, almost a whisper. This is the gift of silence. It is not emptiness, but fullness. It holds the world, and it holds us. When life grows too loud, too hurried, remember this place. Remember that silence is always waiting for you. The children listened, their hearts calmer than before. No one felt the need to answer. The silence was the answer. They remained a while longer, breathing together in the quiet. Some children closed their eyes. Others simply stared at the sky, watching clouds drift slowly across the blue. Time seemed to stretch and soften, as if it too had fallen silent. When they returned to the school, their steps were slower, more mindful. The classroom, usually filled with chatter, felt different when they entered. Even the air seemed hushed, as though the silence had followed them back. Only when they were seated again did Mr. Alaric say, "Now we may speak." But the children did not rush into noise. Their voices were softer than usual, their words fewer, as though they wished to protect the quiet they had just carried. That afternoon, Eli tended to his little sprout. He poured water gently into the soil and sat beside it without speaking. The plant did not move, did not speak, yet Eli felt it alive in its silence. He realized that even the sprout had always been silent, yet it had taught him so much already. That night, as Eli lay in bed, he left his window open. The night air was cool, the stars faint above the rooftops. He listened to the quiet of the world, the occasional chirp of a cricket, the distant rustle of leaves, and the deep, steady silence that wrapped it all together. He breathed slowly, letting the silence hold him, like a blanket woven from stillness itself. And in that hush, his eyes grew heavy, his body soft, and his dreams gentle. Chapter 10: The Farewell Lesson. The days at the little school flowed like a quiet stream. Lessons of patience, of rain, of hills and lanterns, of silence, each had become part of the children's hearts, like stepping stones across a river. Eli, especially, felt changed. He no longer hurried through days, nor feared stillness. He carried the teacher's words with him, like lanterns glowing softly inside. Then, one golden morning, Mr. Alaric gathered the children beneath the tall windows. His walking stick leaned against his chair, and though his face was calm as always, there was a depth in his eyes the children had not seen before. "Today," he said, "will be our last lesson together." The room grew still. The words settled like falling leaves, quiet but full of meaning. Eli's heart trembled. "Last lesson," he whispered. "Yes," Mr. Alaric said gently. "Every chapter must find its closing. I have walked with you through gardens and rains, hills and festivals. But soon it is time for you to walk without me. That, too, is a lesson." The children's eyes shone with sadness, but none of them spoke. They knew by now that silence carried its own truth. Mr. Alaric rose slowly and motioned for them to follow. Together, they walked one last time into the garden. The morning light touched the flowers with a golden glow, and the air smelled of fresh earth and blossoms. The teacher stopped beside the row of windowsill pots, where each child's sprout had grown tall over the weeks. Some had leaves unfurling wide, others had stems reaching bravely upward. Each one was alive, a quiet miracle. "You have cared for these seeds," Mr. Alaric said softly. "You watered them. You waited with patience. And now, they have grown. They will keep growing long after today. So too will you. What you carry within patience, gentleness, silence, light will keep growing if you care for it." He turned, his eyes meeting each of theirs. "That is my farewell gift, the reminder that you are your own teachers now. Every river, every hill, every silence will continue the lesson. All you must do is listen." The children stood in stillness, their hearts full. Eli felt warmth in his chest, but also a heaviness, as though letting go of something precious. They walked together from the garden to the hilltop path. The climb felt familiar now, no longer difficult, but steady. The teacher's steps were slow, yet sure, as though he had walked this path countless times before. At the top, the valley spread below them once more, wide and endless. The river gleamed, the fields stretched like a patchwork quilt, and the sky above opened vast and blue. Mr. Alaric rested his walking stick in the grass and spoke. "This is where I leave you. But look, do you see how the valley remains? The world does not disappear when a guide steps away. It is still here, waiting for your eyes, your steps, your care. Life is the teacher now." The children sat in silence, watching the view. Eli blinked back tears. "But how will we know what to do?" Mr. Alaric smiled. "You already know. You know patience from the sprout. You know rhythm from the rain. You know perspective from this hilltop. You know belonging from the lanterns. You know stillness from silence. These lessons live in you now. Trust them, Eli. Trust yourselves." The breeze stirred gently, carrying the scent of grass and the faint sound of birds. The teacher looked out across the valley one last time, then back to the children. "Remember," he said, his voice soft, "every ending is only a beginning. The lantern does not vanish when its flame is past it, burns in another place. So too will I remain with you, in each patient breath, each gentle step." The children sat together long after his words faded, holding the moment close like a fragile flame. When at last they descended the hill, the sun was dipping toward evening. The school behind them stood quiet, the windows glowing faintly in the light, yet none of them felt truly alone. That night Eli sat by his windowsill, looking at his sprout. Its leaves stretched higher than ever, reaching for the sky. He whispered to it softly, "I will be patient, I will listen, I will remember." And when he lay in bed, sleep came gently, carrying dreams of gardens, rain, lanterns, hills, silence, and the calm voice of his teacher, echoing like a lullaby in his heart. The world outside was vast, waiting, but Eli was no longer afraid. He carried the lessons with him, and that was enough.